Well, hello and welcome to the very first episode of Outlook's brand new show. It's called The Political Pulse, where every week we're going to bring you the biggest political stories. Of course, not all stories will be picked up for discussion, but one or two of them at least will be picked up and will be discussed with a panel of guests. What do we have on the program this evening? Well, we plan to discuss federalism. And if the spirit of federalism has taken a beating in the fight against COVID-19 pandemic, that is the subject of discussion this week. But before we take a deep dive into the discussion with our panel of guests, I want to quickly run you all through some of the biggest political stories this week. Beginning with the extension of the nationwide lockdown. Of course, the center yesterday decided that there will be an extension of nationwide lockdown by another 2 weeks. In a 15-point order issued by Ministry of Home Affairs, it has clarified that certain restrictions have been lifted. Some of the restrictions, of course, have been eased, but at least 130 districts in the country still are marked in the red zones. So that, of course, happens to be one of the most important points. Among the other big stories, India's defense forces have decided to express gratitude to the coronavirus warriors in the country. How do they plan to do it? Well, Indian Air Force will be will be conducting flypasts across the country tomorrow. That's going to be some event for the people of this country. And they will also be showering flower petals on hospitals treating COVID-19 patients. That's their way of expressing gratitude to our coronavirus warriors. The third story that we have today is, of course, the interaction between former Congress President Rahul Gandhi and former RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan. The two of them had a conversation over video conference, which was broadcast across social media platforms by Congress. They talked about economy. They talked about the lockdown exit strategy. They spoke of the migrant crisis that has stemmed from the nationwide lockdown, of course. And besides that, Raghuram Rajan also suggested that India needed about 65,000 crore rupees to help support its poor, which he also said is not that uphill a task given the size of India's economy. The fourth big story this week, of course, concerns Maharashtra politics. The Election Commission of India has finally decided that they will conduct elections to 9 vacant MLC seats in Maharashtra, thereby averting another potential crisis. And why do I say it was a potential crisis? I say it because if the elections were not conducted, or even today, if the elections are not conducted before May 27, Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray will have no other option but to resign because of the rules that are there in place. Those were the big stories of the week, of course. But bringing your attention back to the subject of discussion that we have this week, we've got a panel of guests. I wonder if Mr. Trivedi, Dinesh Trivedi, all right, Dinesh Trivedi is there. Good evening, sir, and welcome to this very first episode of Outlook Political Pulse. Mr. Trivedi, I hope you're able to hear me, sir. Am I audible?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, sir. We all can. I hope everybody can hear each other before I introduce everybody to each other, as well as the viewers who are live currently with us.
Yeah, sure.
I wonder if Ms. Chaudhary is able to. Okay, let me quickly introduce you all. Introduce our viewers to the guests. We have Mr. Dinesh Trivedi, a very senior Trinamool Congress leader, and of course a former Union Minister. He's also one of the 4 candidates of Trinamool Congress for the Rajya Sabha elections, which unfortunately couldn't happen because of the coronavirus outbreak. We've also got with us Ms. Mirza Chaudhary, a very senior journalist and political commentator. Thank you so much to both of you, and a very warm welcome, of course. The other two, of course, we have our political editor from Outlook magazine, Bhavna Vij Arora, who's there live with us, and of course, Puneet Nicholas Yadav, another assistant editor at Outlook magazine. A very warm welcome to all of you. I think I've already taken about 5 minutes for this introduction. I'm going to quickly throw open this discussion. My first question is to Mr. Trivedi. I want to understand, Mr. Trivedi, from you, if in the most recent meeting that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had with the state chief ministers, I wanted to understand if the decision to extend the nationwide lockdown was arrived at through a consensus in the spirit of federalism, or this was once again decided by the center itself. Over to you.
Thank you very much for having me here, and I must compliment Outlook for the first venture which they are having it in this difficult period. Having said that, let's understand two very simple things which are not really as simple. One is we are into very difficult times, and difficult times requires very different kind of solutions. Now, we are dealing with two new things in the lives of India, particularly. One new stuff is the COVID-19, and the other new stuff is NDMA, which is known as DM Act. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in such a big way, it is for the first time being implemented. So there are two new stuff which we are really dealing with. And NDMA has tremendous power. So virtually, and I'm not criticizing, I'm just letting you know the fact as I know, I may be wrong. I'm subject to facts. NDMA means you are virtually in the central rule. And that is constitutionally given the power to the chairman, who's the Prime Minister of India. Now, state consultancy of the state doesn't mean concurrence. So the state has their own views, and the difficult part is that directions are given by the center under the act. The implementing agency is the state. So I think the state has to do a lot of stuff, and many times the federal structure at Delhi may not realize the difficulties in implementation. And many times they rely on information not given by the state. And I do not know information comes from where. Now, I'll give you a very concrete example. Like in yesterday, red zones, I'm just giving you the factual thing. I'm not criticizing nothing, the factual stuff for the people to understand. Now, Bengal has been given 10 districts as red zone. As per the state, the district of Kalimpong, Jalpaiguri, Murshidabad, Malda, and Purbo Bardhaman do not fall under this category. So how the federal structure has arrived into this, we do not know. So I think there are these kind of difficulties, and there are difficulties, for example, is a huge financial burden on the state. Now, GST money, if it is not given, the money which comes to the state, like petroleum product, like so many other products, the sale of which is not there at this moment. So it becomes very difficult. So to answer your question, whether the state was consulted or not in the way which the federal structure demands.
All right. I wonder if Ms. Chaudhary is here.
I think she has lost the connection or something. I can't see her there.
All right, all right. Let me take it across to you, Bhavna. I want to understand how exactly is what position is the center right now in? I'm talking about the central government, the PMO, as well as the Home Ministry and Health Ministry. We have seen very little interaction firsthand from these three major offices of the country. I want to understand, because you keep a keen eye on these offices. How do they plan to deal with it? Because they have extended the lockdown for now. They have started trains once again for the migrant laborers. They're sending them back. What is the way forward? Is there something in the works?
You mean where the lockdown is concerned, or what the central is doing for the states? That is what you want.
Yeah.
See, like Mr. Trivedi also said, center is actually just giving instructions. They are having these meetings with the chief ministers. The PM has already had 3 interactions with the chief ministers. But lots of chief ministers also come back to say, he gives us a hearing. to be fair enough, they say he gives us, the prime minister gives them a hearing, and many times all of them don't even get a chance to say what they want to say, but some of them do get a hearing, but they say that, but there is no follow up to that. Like if they say we don't have the money, we need the GST money, they say okay, PM listens to them, but nothing really happens after that. So there is only one way thing that is happening so far. So it's all unilateral so far, that what is happening. So states, even for the migrants issue, for example, now which is happening. So the center is now said, okay, the migrants can go back home, the trains can run, I mean the buses can run, but now it is up to the states to implement it, and how the states have to deal with each other. So there is no direction on that. So it is all very chaotic at the moment. I think Mr. Trivedi can tell us, since he's been the railways minister, that how it all works out on ground.
Yeah, I'll come back after you. Let me, I mean, if you want me to react on this, I can do it now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
You see, for example, I mean, it's no brainer. Railways are experienced to run millions of people, 23 million on a daily basis, more than 20,000 trains. They are the only organization which can very effectively and in a very nice way could have transported this migrant using technology, using the OR model, using a lot of apps which are on the phone, without creating a stampede on the station, which we have seen. But this should have been done even before you had declared the lockup. Now, lockdown, you had to do it, you did it, I have no complaint, because you are dealing with something new. But before that, you should have understood that there are poor people. Like we politicians go during elections, folding our hands to the poorest of the poor. But India has been exposed in two ways, that how we have treated our poor. I mean, it breaks your heart when you see thousands of them with little children walking on the highways. Today I saw a concrete machine on a truck, and there were 18 migrants inside that hole.
Yeah. We saw the
transported. I mean, this is not India which we boast about. So I think there is a human right issue as well. So railways could have very effectively done it. And I have been telling this from day one, when the lockdown was declared, that the only way to transport these poor migrants is by railways from point to point. There Durustai, now they have done it. But I personally feel it's not done in a way. Leave it to the railways. Don't interfere. They are the best organization. Leave it to them. They know, they have the expertise to do it. But if you interfere and if there are many other agencies involved, then I'm afraid they'll make a mess out of this as well.
Okay.
So do you think that
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So do you think that the states can deal with it? Okay, railways comes under the center, and now it is the migrants have to go from one state to the other. And now lots of states are saying that it's a problem because they are unable to coordinate amongst each other. So how is that problem solved?
No, I think they have to solve. People have a right to reach their home. I don't think so. Such a huge country. And like, for instance, Mamata Banerjee has gone on record saying that I will organize for each and every person who has been stranded anywhere in India. So I think it is the responsibility collective of the center and of the state. Unfortunate part is these poor people would have been there wherever they are, but you have not given them food. You have asked them to have social distancing in a 4 by 5 feet room. If there are 10 people there, how do you expect them to have social distancing? Dharavi, how will you explain them? How do you expect them to have social distancing? That's good for we people who can afford the haves. And please understand, India belongs to have-nots also. They also have a vote. They are also citizens. So I think it reminds me of Gandhiji saying that, you know, the measure of a society is how you treat the poor. And I think we have miserably failed. I think in the entire episode, what we have done, that we all collectively have miserably failed in dealing with the poorest of the poor. Today, under this act, very honestly, uh, COVID may go away, but my apprehension is democracy could be one of the biggest casualty, because politicians everywhere in the world, we all do talk about democracy, but we like powers. So I am afraid, like you look at America, governors are like the chief minister. You can't dictate a governor. You cannot tell a governor that I order you, President of America, to shut down New York. The governor will say, thank you very much. I'm independent. I'll do whatever is good for New York. I don't think so. The chief minister of India can say that. So I think, there was a task force to review, which was in 2013. And that task force, I'll read it to you, which said that uh, it did say that, for the thing which this is with form cannot do work very effectively. It says not convinced for carrying out the task it has been mandated to perform. And this is virtually, we are into a police raj.
Mr. Trivedi, I have a question. I think a couple of weeks ago, a couple of teams were actually sent by the center to West Bengal to a number of cities, and Mamata Banerjee-led government expressed reservations with respect to the team that was sent. I want to understand from you that if it has to be a coordinated fight against COVID-19 pandemic. Why was there a problem with state government, joining hands with the teams that were sent by the center to facilitate basically the fight against COVID-19?
No, that's why I said that, this is such a fight, if you want to use the word. I don't like that word fight. We have to manage,
Yeah.
and we have to manage intelligently. So a solid unit is the country. And if you are at such a fight, some people call it war. I don't like to use the war. Then you have to be solidly together. And the basic thing is you have to trust your chief ministers. You have to trust your chief secretaries. Because please understand, the chief ministers are not nominated. They are elected by crores and crores of the people. And your law and order is state subject. Your health is state subject. Now, both these subjects are state. And the infrastructure, the chief minister and the chief secretaries, they know the infrastructure well. Like I just gave you an example, that how come your 6 districts, which as per the state is not red zone, on what basis the federal structure has put? So trust is the basic factor. Now, when you are sending all this team, they are most welcome. Under you, the federal system has all the power. But for heaven's sake, trust them. Please trust them. If there are any issues, sit down with them, have a conversation on the phone, and ask them, what are your priorities? What you need? Do you want us to send somebody? All these things can be done in a very, very friendly environment. Politics can be left behind, which unfortunately, I personally feel pan-India. I don't think so. It's only Chief Minister of Bengal. I think many chief ministers have come. They're like Kerala. They thought that they were okay with opening up barbershops. But the center said no. Ultimately, the responsibility of making sure that the citizens of your country and the state are safe is shared between the federal and the state authorities. State is run by the chief minister and the team of the bureaucrats. Federal system is run as you know how it is run. So I think this has to be a great combination of the two. Unfortunately, we have made it into religion, we have made it into state versus. This is not the time. I think you have to really, really come out of it. The way you see the scenes, like the migrants are being treated, police is using the lathi, compassion to hai nahi na. And today we are scared. We are scared of 2 things. We are scared of the disease, and we are scared of the authorities. Today, God forbid, somebody has a heart attack, or somebody fractures a leg, or somebody's appendicitis bursts. You will not get a doctor in the normal case. when you go to a hospital, the hospital is sorry, the doctors are not here. And the stigma which you have attached to this thing. Why so much of stigma? I don't understand. This is, I think, a year or 2 years down the line, this will be like any other flu. I was in charge of a junior minister of health. We have experience of facing what was known as H1N1. We did not panic. There was no lockdown. The severeness was as you see today, because that was also something the world did not know. But we handled it in a very, very humane manner, and successfully we came out. If you see the entire world figure, there were deaths in lakhs. Again, America was also having the brunt of it. So I personally feel what we are doing today. Today the question is between, like everybody says, life and livelihood. And sometimes I feel when we hear the doctors and the experts saying that, listen, 80% of them will not even feel they will have it. 80% of the people will have very, very mild symptoms. 5% may have, out of that 80, a severe symptoms. But 80% don't need hospitalization. So first you said everybody quarantine. Now you say you can be at home. First you say everybody mask. So I think somewhere down the line, you have not planned it. And this requires planning, not panic.
Okay. So we are getting just 1 minute, Arif. I'll just read out the questions which we are getting.
Sure.
So we are getting questions from people who want to know, is West Bengal hiding COVID deaths? Because there's at least 3 questions we've got that is West Bengal suppressing the figures?
That's what, in fact, just because before Mr. Trivedi said something, I think that's what the governor of West Bengal has also repeatedly said over the course of past couple of days.
So that is what our viewers want to know, sir.
I'll just ask you one thing.
Yeah.
And here is where, this university of WhatsApp, it's all flooded. And I got a message comparing Punjab with Bengal, that how Punjab has come together, how the farmers have done. Now, I phoned this morning a very senior minister in Punjab, and I said, what do you think about this method? He said, it's all nonsense. There is no such coordination happening. And so, these are the things which are fake news, as we say. Having said that, now let us face this question. This question is being doing rounds, that bodies are being burned. Now you tell me, in this kind of a democracy, where you have social media, where you have mainstream media, is it possible for any doctor to hide the deaths? So all you have to see, take the number of people died in April 2019 and comparing with April 2020. I mean, there are a lot of reasons for which people might not have died. Fortunately, road accident, mugging, a lot of other stuff. The environment is clean, so a lot of people might not have died because of respiratory reasons. All I'm trying to suggest is no doctor is going to risk his license and sign. How does it help a doctor? So I personally feel there is a lot of such politics going around, and the center team has come. Let there be transparency. There is no doubt about it. Mamata Banerjee herself always, every day, is out on the street. Today, if your neighbor has cough and cold, he may not call the police or the authority, but you will call because you are afraid of it. So in today's environment, nobody can hide nothing. So I personally feel there is a lot of propaganda to this figure, that death figure is not proper. I mean, there are burning hearts. There are graveyards. They must be having figures of people who are dying. Has the figure come out? Like yesterday, it was only 100. Today, 500 deaths. It can't happen. It just cannot happen. And today, like experts say, that you will not even have symptoms. 80% will not have symptoms. Today, I was reading somewhere that all you require in the entire numbers of 30,000 figures today we have close to only 80 ventilators were required. So this is, for some reason, is not as severe. I do not know. Maybe our immunity is better. Maybe we have taken the vaccines. I'm not an expert. Nowhere near that. Something, the virus is not working as rigorously as it is doing in the West, or maybe the West has not been able to manage. So all I'm suggesting is, I don't think so. Entire bureaucracy will connive with the chief minister and say, okay, no, well, it's not possible in today's structure. At least few bureaucrats will come out and say, no, this is not proper. The policeman will come out, the citizen will come out. So let the WhatsApp group stay aside and let's talk about the facts. And if somebody can prove with facts and figures, sure, why not?
Uh, I wonder if we have Ms. Chaudhary live with us. Is Nija with us, Bhavna, or we direct our question to Puneet?
I not. She was there. Her audio is there. Her video is not there. Just Nirja, are you there? I think
All
she
right.
has
I
a
think
problem with the connection.
I think I'll direct my question to Puneet before I come back to Mr. Trivedi.
Yeah.
You can reach on phone if it's available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Puneet, there's something that Mr. Trivedi talked about. He talked about the GST collection that has fallen dramatically. I want to understand from you if there was any provision within the National Disaster Management Act to create a fund to help support. I'm not going to use the word fight, but to manage COVID-19. Is there any such provision? Because the only fund that we have heard of till at this moment is the PM Cares Fund, and there of course have been several questions with respect to that as well. Puneet.
Yes, I think that's where there's a lot of problem in terms of dealing with the crisis. Now, Mr. Trivedi talked about the National Disaster Management Act. I'll also make another reference of, in the constitutional scheme of things, in our constitution, public health is a state subject.
State subject, yeah.
At the same time, epidemics or controlling infectious epidemics falls under the concurrent list. That is where the center's responsibility also comes in. Now, the problem here is that the National Disaster Management Act of 2005, a lot of it has been mentioned by the center while, putting in place the lockdown or ordering, different kinds of corrective measures against migrants who were or people who were violating the lockdown. What the center has not been talking about is the most important part of the National Disaster Management Act, which is that in case of a national disaster, the presiding officer, which happens to be the Prime Minister of India, has to set up an executive council. The executive council has to put in place a national plan, a disaster management relief plan. We are now over 40 days into the lockdown. We have still not heard a word about the National Disaster Relief Fund. Where is that fund? The second aspect that the DM Act talks about is another fund which is called the National Disaster Mitigation Relief Fund. Now, both these funds have to be set up. It is mandatory. It is given under the law. We are not talking about these two. And mind you, these measures which are listed out in the DM Act specifically answer each and every concern that is being raised today, which is it gives provisions for setting up of relief camps. It gives provisions for providing health, food, water, sanitation, medical aid to people who are stranded because of any kind of a disaster. All of this is mentioned, but we don't hear about it from the central government. We don't hear the Prime Minister talk about it. The second aspect about it is that we don't have a National Disaster Relief Fund. We don't have a Disaster Mitigation Relief Fund. What we have is PM Cares, which is absolutely opaque. We do not know how it is going to be spent, whether it is going to be subject to an audit like the Disaster Relief Fund is, or the Prime Minister's Relief Fund is. Now, if that is not working around the federal structure and finding a way to render it ineffective, then what is?
Yeah, yeah. I want to bring in Bhavna here because I think
I just add to that, if you don't mind.
sure.
See,
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
entire DM Act was envisaged for coordination, should work more collaborative, consultative, issues like movement of labor, it says, availability of livelihood, relief camps, is detailed, and more important that who would be the members of this committee. And I think the chief minister should have been made the members rather than just at the federal level, at the PMO's level, they tell this is what you have to do. In a democracy, I don't think so. It's a good thing. I think it should have been a collective responsibility, and the chief ministers of states should have become part of this group who would be deciding how to act, like you have the GST Council. And unfortunately, it's not being done. It is just like, I am the federal, I tell you this, you better do it. That's not good for the spirit of democracy. This will come and go. But if there is going to be a damage of democratic spirit, I think it will not be good for any country in the longer run. And we have seen what has happened in some of the countries. Some of the countries we have seen where the entire authority has been taken. Now we don't even know how long it's going to take. And I don't even know whether this is perhaps the best way to do it, because all we have, the world has done without really knowing much about the virus, which I can understand is very scientific stuff. We have followed the Chinese model of locking down. Locking down is a stopgap arrangement. I have no quarrels with that. You had to do it. But it cannot be like Abhimanyu's Chakravyuh, that you have entered, now you can't get out. I can tell you there will never ever be time where COVID will be zero. It cannot happen. Today, the districts which are green, tomorrow it could be red. The ones which are red could become green. This is dynamic. It's going to carry on. Does it mean that you will stay locked down forever? Not possible. Not possible at all. You will have to think about a way to get out of this. And there are only two ways. One is your vaccination could be far, but treatment, medication, and herd immunity. In herd immunity, unfortunately, a lot of people could die. But I think we'll have to think about how to get out. Because if you do not get out, the patience of the poor people will run out. I saw today videos of Maharashtra in the mainstream television, not in social media, that the police were trying to control people for social distancing. Now they don't have space. Where are they going to go? So you can't use lathi. So what my fear is, you do not want to see vulgar pictures in terms of fighting, rioting. Tomorrow they will come out for food. I think they are into a very dangerous zone. So you better think about how are you going to get out with minimum damage. Lockdown permanently is never a solution. That is why the other democracies are seriously considering getting out of it.
Bhavna, if I may come across to you and ask, what is the Prime Minister and what do the ministries actually think of PM CARES Fund? Because as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think any of the funds have been released as yet. As Puneet pointed out, there will not be any audit by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India of that particular fund. There is another thing that I'm going to read out from one of the FAQs put out by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, according to which, if any industrialist or a company or a corporate house makes any contribution to Prime Minister's Care Fund, it qualifies under exemption of corporate social responsibility. But if the similar contribution is made to a Chief Minister's Relief Fund or a state relief fund, it does not qualify as a corporate social responsibility exemption. In a way, people would call it encouragement, but it seems as though people have been compelled to contribute more towards PM CARES Fund, thereby concentrating all the funds. how does the Prime Minister or PMO look at this criticism of the fund and the way it has been set up?
Yeah, you are right. States have, in a way, people are being discouraged to contribute to the CM's relief funds. And now all the states have their own relief funds. I think West Bengal was probably one of the first, isn't it, Mr. Trivedi?
Yeah, we had announced
Yeah,
that
yeah.
under
So
what constitutional provisions.
yeah, so but most people are being encouraged to contribute to the PM Care Fund. And yes, as of now, there is no way of auditing or anything. And the Prime Minister's office, the government, everybody, they are saying this is not the time, like everything that this is not the time to question. And we need the money because we need for basically for augmenting healthcare system. So as of now, all the questions in this regard are being blocked.
So in
Okay.
case of West Bengal, everything is transparent. Everything is out on the website itself. So even if somebody wants to contribute, is there who, where, how much, and where is the fund going to be used? Everything in democracy, nothing can be opaque. Everything has to be transparent. And the spirit of democracy and the letter, I think the spirit of democracy, Jawaharlal Nehru, Dr. Radhakrishnan, everybody mentioned about the spirit. So I think we'll have another day to discuss this, but today how to stop this is very important.
Puneet, I believe, has a question for you. Puneet?
No, I had a point to make that, every
Sure.
single
Go ahead.
state government, every chief minister has a chief minister's relief fund. Those relief funds
Okay.
are transparent. Those relief funds are based on a statute. The prime minister also at the central level sits over a prime minister's relief fund. There are also relief funds that are provisioned for as per the Disaster Management Act. Now, why those are not being utilized and why is there this compulsion on contributors to contribute to the PM Cares Fund to avail of CSR, any tax exemptions, etc.
Yeah.
And why can they not contribute that to the state? Now, since we're talking about federalism, I think that itself is a major attack on the federal structure. The other aspect of it is that when you already have provisions for a relief fund which is transparent, which is under the statute, why do you want to have something which is going to raise questions, particularly at a time like this? It's almost like the prime minister saying that I'm a compulsive contrarian and I'm going to do things my way, irrespective of what is there on what's there as per the law. Now, naturally, that is going to raise a controversy which was absolutely needless at this point in time.
Yeah.
See, adding to that, I mean, there are some of the corporates which I read somewhere have not paid salaries to their employees, but they have contributed to this fund. I mean, first, I mean, the priority, even the prime minister must say, first you pay your salary, then give it to the fund. They have not paid salaries to their people, much needed daily bread. Forget about the butter part. And you contribute to the prime minister. I have no problem. Do that, but look after your people, the poorest of the poor.
So just one uncomfortable question before we come to an end. We are talking about federalism. I know it is not a good thing to talk about politics where fight against corona is concerned. But do you think somewhere the center is targeting the non-BJP states? For example, West Bengal and in Maharashtra, this unnecessary controversy was created when the elections were, when the governor was blocking the election of of the chief minister. So do you think somewhere, sir?
At times the answer is in the question itself. If somebody is not well, then you ask that, are you okay? It means something is not right. So your question has the answer. And let's understand, so far, India has been very fortunate. Everybody has understood. Everybody has behaved. We are much better off than so many countries. Whether the figures are right, wrong, that's not at the moment the question. The fact is that India has been able to contain deaths. And the figure is, fortunately, somebody was telling that India in 10 million cases, the death is only 8, as compared to Europe and America, which goes to 4 figures per 10 million. So I think God has been kind. Citizens have behaved very well in spite of the struggle, in spite of the poverty. The best behaved, my heart goes to the poorest of the poor. Now let us work together. I mean, let the Prime Minister and the federal government take all the credit, no problem at all. But India has to survive, and which India will. Today is the time where, if we are talking about China, let India get the economic advantage. It goes to Vietnam, it goes to some other countries. Why can't it come to India? The best brain in the world is Indian. Today, if you see the multinational of the world is all ruled by Indians. So India can sort it out, but please work together. Prime Minister is capable of working together. I have no doubt about it. But sometimes you have team around you, which makes you much more than what you ought to be. So I think this is a great opportunity of India. India is going to come out of it. Let's make this opportunity into making India greater than what it is.
Mr. Trivedi, before we conclude this conversation, one last thing. Several state finance ministers have raised concerns that once the country comes out of this lockdown, there could be a financial emergency on state levels. Do you also share?
Negative. GDP is already negative. So it's staring at you. Now you do not want death due to starvation. Lockdown was easier. Getting out of this lockdown is not going to be easy. It's going to give you much more difficult task. And like I said, once you come out of the lockdown, doesn't mean that the virus is going to vanish. Virus is going to be there, like H1N1 is still there. So we have to live with this. That doesn't mean that everybody who gets going to die, no. So we have to face this very boldly and understand this, and our scientists are absolutely great in that. I would have been very happy if the Prime Minister's fund would have said that here is so many $1 billion or $1 million if you can't have billion. Or we have billion rupees only for science, give it to private sector, give it to we are the best doctors, we have the best scientists, and I'm sure they could come out with a treatment much earlier than the world.
All right. On that note, Political Pulse will be back next week. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, Mirza ji. Thank you so much, Bhavana.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.